Hey Sarah, how are you?
Hi, I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing well too. So, the listeners may see that I'm in my kids' playroom. I've got toys and other unprofessional sorts of props behind me. So, we're just going to have to get over it and focus on the business at hand.
That is A-okay. I have a cat behind me.
So, Sarah has, is it multiple cats or is it just one inquisitive cat?
I have two, which I never thought I was going to be that person, but because I'm more of a dog person. But yeah, I have two.
Do you have any dogs?
I have one dog.
Okay, so one dog and two cats. And
Yeah.
why? I don't think two cats is a lot. You seem a little shy about having two cats.
I have like a human to animal ratio, I believe in. It's like 1 to 2. And so now I'm vastly outnumbered, but I also I'm always scared about being like that cat person whose house smells bad or whatever. So I'm very obsessive about that, but they're siblings, so it was kind of a package deal and they're fun. They're
Got it.
great. They're like dogs, so
Got it. So you are very outnumbered. You're 3 to 1, I
yeah.
guess, would be the ratio. And so I'm sure they
Yeah.
conspire against you at night, and but they haven't done anything against you yet.
No, thankfully they're very peace loving animals. They just like attention.
Okay. As long as you feed them, they're happy.
Yes, as long as I feed them and I bring some people over for them to hang out with, they're happy as can be. So I like to keep
Okay.
it that way.
And nobody's walking into your apartment and saying, or your house and saying, ew, it smells like cats.
I ask everybody, I always say, be honest, does it smell like animals in here? And the best compliment everybody gives me is, I wouldn't even know you have any. So
Ah, that's good.
that's
Well,
that's the
I and
goal.
my entire family, I have a daughter who's especially allergic, is allergic to cats. Just deathly
Hmm.
allergic. I mean, within a minute, 60 seconds, maybe 120 seconds, within walking into somebody's living space, if there's cats, I can tell you without seeing the cat. I can tell you if there's cats.
I am actually the same. I'm not that level allergic, but I am very allergic to cats.
Really?
Um, but I've lived with them kind of on and off my whole life. My parents had them, and they were like, "We're not getting rid of our animals, so do what we can to keep her comfortable." And I kind of apply that to this. So I have air purifiers in every room. I vacuum really frequently. I have someone who comes and cleans for me. So,
Very good.
and I feel like you kind of build up like a tolerance. But I definitely agree. When I am at other people's homes that have cats, I get like hives and my eyes get all, itchy and
Yeah,
it's not fun. But
that's the worst. That's the
these ones are
worst.
cute. They stay clean, so
That's good. All right, so I'm going to introduce you. You're an Indianapolis, Indiana hairdresser and salon owner who focuses on extensions. You're a multiple finalist in the BTC One Shot Awards. You're the most awkward person in front of the camera, so you usually hate pictures of yourself, but you love taking pictures of all of your clients that make your clients feel the best. Your ideal cocktail is anything bubbly with mint, citrus, and probably cucumber. And by the way, this is where the audience is like, wait a second, Eric's never done an intro like this. Well, audience, I loved you know how we always talk about in this industry when it comes to Instagram, we always talk about kind of reintroducing yourself with a post
hmm.
to clients and hopefully soon to be clients.
Yes.
Talking about yourself. And so Sarah did a really good job of that about 3 weeks ago on her gram. So I'm just rolling my intro directly into her caption because I liked it so much. Okay, so Sarah is suffering through coffee hurting her tummy all the time, but needing the
It's true.
most caffeine at all times. And I'm sure that some of the audience are like, me too, samesies. So I just thought that that would be a good one to read. You're constantly redoing something in your house. You're currently planning your next international trip. And just out of curiosity, whether you're actually doing this like metaphorically or actually doing it, doesn't really
Hmm.
matter. Where would you like to go next internationally?
Well, next month I'm going to Croatia and England,
Boom. For work or
but
fun?
for fun. But I would
Wow.
love to get back to Italy. Probably it'll have to be in the new year, but yes.
Yeah, amazing. And Croatia is just right across the, what is it, the Adriatic Sea
Mm-hmm.
from Italy. And I
Yep.
understand that it's so beautiful. The water is amazing and clear and everything, and probably a little cheaper than Italy, although I've never been there, so I'm not sure. Do I have it right?
Yeah, it's very picturesque. It's like very stereotypical Mediterranean, and um, not to dumb the country itself down because it certainly deserves its own, accolades. But like a lot of people say that it's like going to Greece, but
Mm,
a shorter flight because Greece is really far away. Honestly, I feel like you
it
kind
is.
of discount that in your head. But some of Game of Thrones was filmed there, so all like a lot of the really beautiful like King's Landing and whatnot. And
Mm.
it looks like Greece. It's really beautiful. Well, from what I've seen, it's beautiful. So I'm excited to go.
Well, I'm excited for you to go because I've seen and heard a lot of the same things. Okay,
Hmm.
you're always sleepy, but fueled by what? What did you write in the caption? Do you remember?
Oh, I don't know, actually. That's a great question.
Fueled by sunshine, which I loved.
Yes, that is
You're,
very true.
you're currently obsessing over the idea that orcas are actually aliens. I don't know. I don't know why that's weird. Why do you think that's weird? Never mind. Moving on. And you finally got over your fear of dog parks, which is where you're convinced Felix, the indie dog, which I'm assuming is your dog,
Yep.
will help you meet your first husband. Nice to meet
Yep.
you. So there you go. There's
Nice
the
to meet you.
intro. Do you like
It's
it that I
wordy,
just
but
What's that?
I said it's a little wordy, but
Yes, a little wordy, but full of personality, and that's why I liked it. So now we know a little bit about you.
hmm
And and then to wrap up the longest intro in the history of the Hair Game podcast, going on 6 years now. On your
nice.
Instagram story today, you were complaining that you couldn't connect your iPad to your iPhone.
hmm
So I'm
That is
dying
true.
to know, did you figure that out?
I did. I did. That is how I'm connected today. I still don't fully remember how I did it, but I bought this, as I said in my story, I bought this iPad really just to like watch movies on when I'm traveling or like when I'm doing Zoom calls for business, so that I don't have to use my phone. And to be honest, I had it in my travel backpack for like a couple months. And so I just got it out today and charged it. And I was like, I cannot remember how to do anything on this iPad. I didn't even set it up properly. So here we go.
That's very funny and a little bit of a coincidence, and that's why I mention it because I just got back from the computer fix-it place
Oh,
where
okay.
where they helped me hook up my kids' computer. So my kids are now at the ages where the school requires them to have a
Mm,
computer. And my wife and I have been delaying and delaying and deferring and delaying the moment at which they would have their own screen.
yeah.
And so
Yeah.
here we are, and we went over there to figure it out. And because it's complicated, how to
Yeah, it
set it
is.
up. And I want to be the parent online. And so I'm watching, right? And making sure they're not doing anything illicit. And so
Sure.
to set this up requires somebody smarter than I. So we went over there and we did the whole Apple ID thing, which is I'm guessing how you linked your phone to your iPad.
Originally, yes.
Okay.
Now that you say
Okay.
that, I remember that.
Yeah, I would have known that if I had just gotten back, if I had not just gotten back from the computer store. Okay, enough of me talking. It's your turn to talk. Tell us where you're from and how you got into this business.
So I'm from Indianapolis originally, and I grew up around here. Didn't move away until after beauty school. I came from a very traditionally academic family, so that was very much focused. Growing up was, you go to college and then hopefully you go to grad school, and that's what you do. And I actually graduated from high school a year early. I skipped eighth grade to go into high school. So I was a little baby 17-year-old when I went off to college.
Hold on,
And
because you were crushing eighth grade or crushing seventh grade?
for high school, I went to a private school that I got an academic scholarship to go to. So I had like they did some sort of testing and interviews and whatnot, but based off of the way that I scored and just the practicality of the way that their system worked, it was a lot easier for them to have me start with the high school class as opposed to the eighth grade class because it was a language based curriculum, well, heavy on the languages, and where I would have started in eighth grade, everybody was trilingual at that point, whereas I could start with a new class of freshmen who were learning the language. So, they academically they felt that I was ready, and then it also just kind of worked out the best. So kind of a weird way to skip eighth grade.
But it sounds kind of cool. So why all the languages? This is a special school, or were you from somewhere else, or just?
So I went to the international school. So they have those like around the world, and and generally they actually were originally created for like children of diplomats who were constantly picking up and moving. That way there's like a consistent curriculum across the world. So obviously it wouldn't be copy and paste exactly, but the focus of the program is, I don't know if you're familiar with the International Baccalaureate. It's like an additional diploma that you can receive on top of like your honors or whatever that you could pick up. And so I could have gone to college in Europe or in Central South America, really anywhere that would have recognized the International Baccalaureate. But it's like a 2-year focused program, your junior and senior year of high school, with the goal of you sit down for a test. Everybody around the world sits down for a test the same days in May. And then all of our testing, plus we do like a research essay, is sent off to judges who, they can't see. We're just a testing number. They judge it and, grade it. And then I cannot remember. I think you had to earn 15 points. If you earned that, then you earned your IB. If you did not, then you could still have your like honors diploma, core 40, all of that kind of thing. But I believe that you were able to just say, I went to this program and I went through the program, but unfortunately you did not receive a diploma, which is really disappointing after all that work, obviously.
No kidding. Okay, so what other languages did you learn?
I learned Spanish.
Okay. All right. So you're going through high school, and then connect the dots to the hair industry. How'd you get here from there?
Well, I had always been that kid who did hair. I cut my siblings' hair when I should not have been. I was in a sorority in college, and I would style people's hair. I had the American Girl dolls, and I was always doing their hair. I remember one year I did like micro braids on my Addie doll, who she was like the one like doll of color. And so I like stole my sister's braces little elastics, and I like did micro braids all over her head. So it was always something that I really enjoyed, and I always was really artistic. Like I painted and drew and was kind of into all of that. That went by the wayside when I was more in high school, middle school, and I was focusing on my academic side of life. So it was kind of always in the background, and I had a lot of fun in college. I did not go to class very much. I messed up a couple times over. Yep. I got a little taste of freedom, and I found out how much I love being social, and I liked not having a bedtime or having to answer to anybody, and I took full advantage of that. So I actually I was kind of lost as to what I wanted to do. I was changing my major over and over, and I took a career assessment, like one credit class. And so we did this like really long, extensive, it was over the course of January. And in the end, they would give us their career assessment. And my top one was business owner and hairstylist. And I remembered being like, I don't know if I can curse or not, but I was like, what is this? Like, okay, I was like, what the fuck? What is this? I'm in college. Like, why is it telling me to be a hairstylist? So anyway, long story short, I ended up getting mono, and I did not take care of myself. I was having a lot of fun while having mono, and ended up being very, very ill. So I had to withdraw. And in that time, I kind of worked up the courage to tell my parents, like, hey, I don't want to go back to college. I really want to go do hair. My great grandmother actually was a hairstylist, and she owned a salon in New York.
Hmm.
And her name was Sarah too. But
Okay.
it was cool to think about, that family connection. And so, yeah, I nannied for a couple months and saved up money and got into hair school. And then the rest is history.
Wow. Okay. Very interesting. And so your parents, what was their reaction to you telling them this?
They were not happy. My my mom always expected like her daughters. She fought tooth and nail to get into, and she's got a PhD. My dad has a master's. My older sister has a PhD. We've got a lot of academic success in our family, and so I think that was always something that was expected and hoped for. And definitely, like most people, I really struggled in the beginning of my hair career. I was making like below poverty wages for years. And, I did an apprenticeship program when I was in Chicago and, worked a ton, did not make very much money. And then, as I was starting out and trying to find my way in coming back to Indianapolis, I was making like qualified for food stamps level poverty wages. So, to them, they were like, my mom every once in a while would be like, why don't you go back to school and do like an x-ray technician? Why don't you go back to school and do this sort of thing? How about like nursing? How about teaching? And honestly, like a lot of things in my normal life would come easy to me as a kid. I just was able to pick up on things quickly and I was bored. And honestly, hair was the first thing that I really wanted to be good at and I had to work hard to be good at. And so then I was just kind of determined to stick with it and I really wanted to kind of prove them wrong. My mom made me call my grandma the first like Thanksgiving because I skipped Thanksgiving because I was being a coward the year that I dropped out of college. And my mom was like, okay, well, you're going to call your grandma and you're going to tell her that you're dropping out. So I called my grandma and I let her know. And she was quiet. And she said, okay, well, then you just have to be the best hairstylist that there is. And so
Good for
that's
her.
kind of something that, I mean, I'm not by no means am the best hairstylist that there is, but, it's to be the best that I can possibly be personally.
Sure.
And so that was kind of always this driving force was to not only prove my parents wrong, but also, to push with that in the back of my head. And I also genuinely just loved it. Like I loved doing hair. I loved the artistic side of things. I loved the challenge. So even when I was struggling, I was like, I do not want to quit this. I want to keep going.
Yeah. And I mean, that's always advice that the sage, people who write books and stuff always deliver is, you won't work a day in your life
Hmm.
if you're doing what you love, right? Which just seems
Yeah.
so like it's repeated all the time. But you're a really great example of that, and I think that's pretty amazing. And okay, so talk about those early days when you were sub poverty level. You said that you got an apprenticeship. So you got you went to beauty school. Did you get a license and then become an apprentice, or did
Hmm.
you do the apprenticeship through beauty school?
Yeah. So I really wanted to move away from Indianapolis. In my head, I always wanted to move to New York City. That my mom's from New York originally, and I have family there, and grew up going almost every summer, and I just loved it. But then I had a person, like a couple contacts in Chicago, and it was just obviously additionally an easier place. Well, from Indianapolis, it's like 3.5 hours. So it was an easier place for me to access to go interviewing while I was in beauty school. So the plan was I graduated from beauty school, I got my license, I moved to Chicago, and then I entered into an apprenticeship. So yeah, I did that for a little over a year. And then um, kind of it was a tough market. This was in 2009. Like the market crashed while I was in beauty school. It was really hard for me to get a student loan because we didn't have an accredited program. And so we very much felt that. And I remember the stylist who I primarily was apprenticing under, she told me that she had made $50,000 less that year than she had the year before.
Yeah.
And these were girls who were from Chicago, so they had, contacts. And I remember I was like putting ads on Craigslist to get people in as models and, walking around and just meeting random girlies like at, college campuses. And I was going and doing hair at people's apartments, which is really, now that I think about it, so unsafe. But I was just trying to make it. And I feel like that year, I mean, it's the best thing I've ever done for myself. I would not be the stylist I am today if I hadn't done that, because it's very humbling. And you have to stay humble to be able to receive feedback that's sometimes really harsh and sometimes really difficult. But after that time, I was kind of just starting to get this feeling that I needed to move back, that I didn't really think that I was going to be able to get my feet underneath me in the way that I needed to financially to survive there. And so that's where I was not happy about it, but I moved back to Indy. So, at that time, so when I was growing up, I grew up in like I'm trying to think, I don't know, did you ever watch, Parks and Rec?
No, I know the show, but I never watched it.
Okay, so that's in Indiana. It's a much smaller town, but basically, like, I lived in the suburbs of Indianapolis, so
Okay.
like 30 minutes from our city center. Growing up, the cool area was a neighborhood called Broad Ripple. That was like 15 minutes from my parents. And in the time that I had moved away and come back, all of my friends had moved from Broad Ripple into downtown Indy. And so ultimately, I knew that's where I wanted to be. It just took me some time, and I hopped around a little bit salon wise before I was able to land in a salon right on Mass Ave, which is like our kind of main strip in our arts and design group, or arts and design street and area. And that was the last place that I was employed by somebody else.
Interesting. Okay, so tell us about what was causing you to jump from a given salon.
So I guess I wouldn't say I guess I didn't really jump that much, because I started at a salon in the suburbs that was a very wealthy suburb of Indianapolis. And so I went to an Aveda school. So I was working at an Aveda salon, which I returned to. I worked in a Bumble and Bumble and Redken salon when I was in Chicago. So I went back to Aveda because that was kind of where my contacts were. And it was a great experience in the sense that I was able to jump in and just start doing hair immediately. Looking back on it, it's, especially as now a salon owner who supports associates who graduate onto the floor, it was an interesting approach to just having somebody immediately go on the floor and start taking clients. But I did a lot of learning, and I actually was able to learn a lot from a senior stylist there who really kind of took me under her wing and helped guide me. But 2012, super weird. I used to ride horses, and I had a really bad fall off of my horse and broke my ankle, and I had to have 2 surgeries to fix it. It was like a really bad accident. And I'm very thankful that I was wearing a helmet, because I know that I would for sure have a traumatic brain injury if I hadn't, because of how hard I hit the ground.
Wow.
But
What were you
yeah,
jumping?
so I was
Just
off work
curious.
for 10 weeks. Actually, so I did jump, but I was literally just warming my horse up because the vet was coming. So I was just walking him, and he spooked and took off. And then
Oh,
it was like the year of we had a crazy drought that year. And in the process of basically bailing off of him because he was going to run us into a fence, he was just panicking. I landed on my feet, but it was like landing on concrete. So like the impact and then turning and then getting dragged was, all it took for that ankle just to be garbage.
wow.
So I was
Sorry
off work
about
for
that.
10 weeks, which was really
Oh,
hard. I mean, you know what? It was 10 years, or I guess 11 years ago now. So it is what it is. And thankfully it's pretty much fixed. I can't ski and I can't jump on trampolines because I don't want to go through that again. But I
did you have
think it was
disability
in that
insurance?
time that no, absolutely not. No. Yeah. So
So,
that was
so that was
tough. It
very
was very,
difficult.
very hard.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. And I think having that happen made me realize that I needed to just go with what was scary and focus on my career. And I knew that my career path would not keep me in the suburbs. I really wanted to work downtown. So I got a job where my best friend from beauty school was working, also at an Aveda salon. And it was, again, a really good learning experience. A lot of it was learning how not to run my business and how not to employ people. But again, I'm really thankful for it because it brought me back downtown and got me a core group of clients who some of them still come to me to this day. But I was fired from that salon after maybe a couple months, over a year. The
Why?
salon owner she just didn't like. So I had come from a very high performing, high level talent salon in Chicago, where like the girls went and worked New York Fashion Week. They went to Bumble University. Like these were some of the best in that industry. And I saw the way that things, not that the salon was run in a perfect manner, but I saw the way that things should be. And despite like the issues at the salon in the suburbs, that the business itself was just operating at a higher level scale than the salon that I was working at downtown. And sorry.
Cat appearance. Cat appearance for the
cat
listeners.
appearance.
Listeners can't see the cat. Those who go to our YouTube channel, they would be able to see the cat, but the listeners can't. So I'm just letting you know with audio that there's a cat who just made an appearance right in front of Sarah.
Yep, just had to get some attention.
Yes.
But yeah, I definitely questioned some things when I was there. And, I also kind of I had learned to present myself in a certain way that was more professional, I guess, or maybe more elevated than what was currently happening at the salon. And my best friend, I was kind of coming in and she knew that there were things that were, just strange or just not done properly. But I think me being there, I was like, this is crazy. Like, no, we should not be, this is not how it should be. So, ultimately I had some of her clients and some of the other senior stylist clients come to me during a maternity leave, and then they did not want to go back. And so they were kind of just like accusing me of stealing clients, and just also ultimately I was too much of like a push in the salon for somebody who wanted to be more comfortable. So yeah, so she fired me. And it's funny because there are 3 of us at our salon currently who all worked at that salon at one point, who all were fired from the salon. So we consider it to be, an elite club that all of us are a part of. So
yeah, sounds like it.
Yeah, it was great. Yeah. So I was, obviously shocked, but then also, I had to pay my rent and I had a dog and she had to eat. So I was like, got to figure it out. And my friend, who I had kind of essentially been my mentor at this suburban salon, she had gone out on her own and was renting a suite at a salon lofts company. And she really encouraged me to do that. And so I interviewed at one of the other big salons downtown, but they had a very strict and intense non-compete contract that would have included, the second one of my clients that followed me entered the salon, they would be considered the salon client, including my formulas that were entered into the computer system. And I just couldn't sign it. I was like, there's no way. Like, I knew we wanted to open a salon one day. But I also just did not like I understand education contracts. There's things in business that I understand, but our kind of feeling is if you don't want to be here, don't be here. But, if you're not here, I probably don't have a stylist to serve your exact clients who are looking for you. So I'd rather that they follow you and be happy. There's lots of people here. So
we just did an interview with somebody that focused on a few things. One of them was the non-compete agreements, and we tossed around whether they're legal or not, because it is one of those topics in the industry, especially in the Northeast, that is a little controversial right now. And I understand why
Yeah,
the salon owners there want to do it, but I
sure.
don't think it's legal. And certainly no hairdresser, especially a hairdresser with clients already going to that salon, should ever
Hmm.
sign a non-compete. Legal or not,
Yeah,
just shouldn't do it. It
agreed.
doesn't make any sense.
And it very rarely holds up in court. In Indiana, there are rare circumstances where if a business, a salon, can prove that the stylist leaving directly caused them to lose money, they can sue them for that amount. I personally know someone who had to pay out close to 10 grand to a salon because she broke her non compete. But the other thing is a lot of times the salon owners have a lot more money than the stylists do, and so they can afford to pay the attorney fees to kind of stretch it out and make the stylist suffer. And so, sometimes you can call their bluff and just be like, you're not going to uphold it. And a lot of salons don't. It's not worth it to them. But, there are old salon giants that they certainly will. They'll take you to court and they'll make you bleed out some money. So, yeah, I mean, again, I now owning a salon and being a business owner, I try my best to not judge other business owners. There are exceptions where I'm like, you're an asshole. Like, no. But for the most part, it's like, it is a really tough and lonely job. And so, um, a lot of times people are just making decisions that they think are best for their business to keep it afloat. Um, it's just something that personally I would never choose to do. So I'm very
Yeah.
thankful that I did not continue there without salon. And I actually went out on my own. Um, my best friend was fired the year after me. So she came up to the salon lofts and we had all, with a third stylist years before, had made the pact that we wanted to open a salon together. So it was kind of in that time of being independent artists that we set a timeline and a goal as to when we wanted to do that and then focused on how to accomplish that.
Very cool. Very cool. So you were sharing your studio with your friends?
No, we all had our own lofts.
Got it.
So we all independently had our own spaces, but we actually just really wanted to find a space for the three of us to work out of, so that we had more control over the experience than, what a corporate salon could offer. Um, but yeah, we never anticipated employing people. That is for sure.
Yeah. Okay. So then you went and you took that step eventually, and you've got your salon now, and you're focused on extensions. And why did
Yes.
you and when did you decide to focus on extensions? And are just you focusing on extensions, or is the or the other hairdresser, or are the other hairdressers in the salon focusing on extensions as well?
So it is not a requirement at our salon to be extension focused, but we have a lot of stylists who do. And we definitely produce a lot of extension, both artists and clients at the salon. Extensions honestly were something that always interested me from the time that I was apprenticing in Chicago. I saw these women getting, the little individual keratin bonds, and the clientele there and just generationally was super different from the ones that we have now, who it was a secret. Nobody knew that they had extensions. They weren't telling their girlfriends about it. It was just a matter of you having the reputation of being the person in the area. And so that was always something in the back of my head. However, traditionally, Aveda salons just don't do extensions. So once I was out on my own, initially I was really just hustling to survive and pay rent. And so I would create custom clip-in extensions for my clients. So I'd go to like the weave shop and buy like a big machine weft of hair and custom color it to them, cut it up, sew it on clip-ins, and cut it into their hair. And so that was kind of where I started. And then I was also doing a lot of weddings at the time, so it was kind of supplementing. So it was a slow burn. I did tape-ins for a little bit, and honestly, just never loved them. Personally, they were just messy, and they were not great for my hair. I have really fine hair, and I can grow it very, very long, but it will never be luxurious and full. So I was always looking for a solution for myself, selfishly, to have the hair that I wished I could have. And then I kind of started learning on Instagram about the whole beaded row um, wave that was taking over the industry out west. So this was in 2016, I think, that I first was like really wanting to get certified. Like I wanted that, but there were only a couple of companies that were offering that, and it was extremely expensive. That was also the year that we were opening the salon. So didn't have a lot of funds for that. And then ultimately, I just went ahead and made the investment in the end of 2017, I think it was, and came back and honestly had no idea what I was doing. It was one of those classes where it was like, here's how you put the beads in, here's how you sew, here's how you cut it, go, So I was completely lost as to how to do a consultation, how much hair, different rows required, how to, really a lot of the business side of things. And honestly, just, I didn't know how to custom color wefts properly. I didn't know, there was just basically, I knew nothing other than how to put the beads in and kind of how to sew. I was actually showing my old assistant a picture of one of my like earlier work, and I don't remember what I was looking for on my phone, but I was like, hey, look at your girl. Like, you got to start somewhere. And she was like, oh, wow. And I was like, see, like, you're not supposed to be good at this in the beginning. That's why you work on mannequins. Like, this is why we practice over and over again. So yeah, just over the years of watching videos nonstop, I would come in on my weekends and do other stylists' hair and friends' hair. I was lucky in that I had a really supportive clientele who I had been talking this up for years. So I had probably 10 girls lined up to be models for me in the beginning. So I remember I returned home. I stayed the first night until like 2 a.m. installing one of my business partner's extensions. And then that weekend did more on the stylist that worked with us. And then the following week I had clients, and I was just doing it over and over and over again. So between just really the repetitions of working hard and, pulling my mannequin out at home, I was practicing coloring extensions at home. I watched like every single video that I could possibly find on Instagram. And then ultimately I invested in going and shadowing stylists that I respected. And then also just continuing to get certified in other methods that interested me, the way that they, presented things. And yeah, it's kind of led to this today. So honestly, it's the best thing that I could have ever done for my career, because I was getting to the point where I was kind of getting bored, where, by no means do I know everything. By no means am I like the best of the best of the best. But I had kind of hit the point where I had all return clients, and, they all had beautiful hair and they were so fun, and we would change it up every once in a while, but there was no like drop in my stomach, oh shit moment where I was like scrambling or like inner panicking. And I like that every once in a while. It keeps things interesting. And doing extensions was exactly that. It was like 2 years of like, oh shit, all day, every day, as I was scrambling and learning and figuring it out on my clients. And then also kind of trying to help teach people at the salon how to do it. So yeah, it's the extension industry, in addition to color, is ever changing, ever developing. It's crazy to think like what was acceptable and considered good work when I first started doing hair or doing extensions versus what now. And it's wonderful. It's a great thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And so for those listeners hearing you, thinking to themselves, I think I need to add that to my repertoire. Would your recommendation for first steps be similar to what you went through, to similar to what you did in your explanation right there, or something else? How would you recommend to them that they should be, get good enough at extensions before they start marketing themselves as somebody who does extensions? I mean, there's brands. I mean, should they start with which brand to go with, or which educational platform, or which extension type, or how would you do it? How would you recommend it?
So personally, I have stepped away from being overly associated with methods just because ultimately, if you are an experienced extension stylist, you're going to put your own spin and adjust it for the individual client. I am on the Coveted Maine team, so I'm on their considered a coveted stylist, and I've been certified in their extension line, or I'm sorry, in their extension method, which I love.
Again, the name of the brand is Coveted Maine, Mane.
Covet and Maine.
Covet and Maine.
Covet and Maine. And so that has been a great addition. And what I really enjoy about them is they market themselves as this is not the only extension method for you. We're not looking to replace anybody. We're not looking to presume that we are the best. This is a method to add on to the very experienced extension artist who's looking for a community of support and just something to add to their repertoire. So this was like my 4th or 5th certification. Personally, I do not recommend doing things the way that I did because it is very expensive to fuck up extensions. It's very, very expensive, the hair. And you will in the beginning fuck up. That it is what it is. Like, I don't care who you are. There's going to be mistakes and you're going to have to eat the cost. And in the beginning, you don't really have the right to be charging what you need to charge to cover the cost of fuck ups. So, what I personally recommend doing is, no matter where you are in your career, if you know that you want to dive in and you want to exclusively do extensions, or that's something that you're really wanting to get into, find a hairstylist or a salon in your area that is doing work that you love, that you're obsessed with, that you want to emulate, and contact them and see if they have an associate program or an apprenticeship. And then, work to then be an apprentice with a stylist who you want to learn from. And then, ultimately what will happen is and it's hard, it's humbling, for sure, to take a step back from being behind the chair, but it's also a great opportunity for a new baby stylist who's just graduating. That's what I would encourage everybody to do, is jump in and do an apprenticeship. Do not booth rent and get behind the chair immediately. Like, you have a lot to learn still. But ultimately what will happen is that senior stylist or owner or whoever will start filtering their clients to you as they begin to cut back behind the chair or continue to raise their prices to a point that doesn't match, their individual client's budget. And what's great is then you can say, like, I completely understand and I respect that. I have somebody who I personally trained, them. They've been with me for the last 6 to 8 months, and I'd love to set you up with them. So, well, obviously that's not all there is to learn, but that's a great starting point for you to be able to start working on building your knowledge and your confidence and just understanding like all of the little details involved in running an extensions business, because there's a lot to it that is beyond what people see, on the internet. So, and then from there, I encourage people, branch out, find stylists who you're obsessed with and contact them about shadowing. If they're teaching a class, go take that class. If a method interests you, as long as there's not a super complicated NDA, go in and take that certification and, get that training, because just like doing color, there's infinite ways of doing extensions. And there are certainly like wrong ways of doing things, and there's certainly better ways of doing things, but it's not a black and white issue. And it's really just politics and money that has created this like whole holier than thou for better than you concept within that extension industry. It's a really interesting social group. But, I encourage everybody to like stay really open-minded and follow tons of people on Instagram and consume their content, because there's going to be a baby stylist who comes up behind you. Like, I've been doing hair 15 years, and one of my old assistants who just started doing extensions, like, she's coming for me. I know she is. Like, she's literally just a baby, and the work she's doing is so ridiculously good. And I'm like, oh shit, I gotta up my game a little bit. But that's what's going to happen is like, Mimas are going to get kicked out the dinosaurs are not going to be the interesting one for clients to come to anymore. And these girlies who are going to be humble, they're going to put the time in, they're going to be working on their mannequin, and they're going to stay open to like new ways of doing things. They're going to come in and they're going to take over. And it is what it is. So like we as the grandmas in the industry need to make sure that we're reaching back and we're turning around and taking the classes from those girls, because they're coming up with some really insanely amazing way of approaching extensions and color and cutting, you name it.
Very interesting. Okay, so for those listeners who do extensions now and they're looking to kind of optimize what they're doing, one of the issues is, or at least one of the questions that I always hear is, am I pricing myself right? So how do you price yourself? Is it like a product versus time, or how do you do it?
So at our salon, we price hourly. So the hourly is determined by the demand of the stylist time. And then from there, we do a lot of like combination services where we're doing color and extensions in the same service, as opposed to kind of chopping it up from stylist to stylist. So I would say for the most part, everything is hourly based. However, there is like a base per row cost, if that makes sense. So like if a brand new stylist is still training and still in model phase, but for some reason their hourly rate exceeds that, initial model rate, it will reflect that, and within a within a reasonable amount. But the same goes for if there is a stylist whose extension pricing is less than what their hourly pricing should be. It's adjusted accordingly. So we're making sure that people aren't losing out on money. But we price our extension, the hair itself, as products. So retail. And so our stylists earn a commission off of what they sell in terms of the hair. So that is something that honestly is not talked about a lot in the industry. And everybody does everything differently. I mean, you name it, like everybody does their pricing differently. People have package prices, people have a la carte, you name it. If it works well for a business, then that's great, but what works really well for us is having like an hourly rate. And then, we essentially consider extensions, it's a luxury service when you are at the point where you are an expert. It's in a similar manner that we would approach, a corrective color pricing. So if you're doing a major corrective color where you're working nonstop for 7 hours straight, your hourly rate is going to be higher than the average of like just a normal chill day of doing blondes and, a color retouch or whatever. So similarly, because with extensions, there's really not a lot of downtime when you're working on your client. So there's not a lot of like processing sitting time. It's just constant movement. And so definitely that has to be reflected in the cost long term. Obviously, when you're training and when you're learning, that's just not something that you have earned the right to do yet, but you will. We definitely don't want stylists like breaking their bodies and not feeling like they can work less.
Sure. All right. So what keeps you up at night?
Oh, just about everything, so we employ quite a lot of stylists, or a lot of people in our salon, I should say, beyond just stylists. We have a lot of support staff. And so just the day-to-day business is just a constant stress. And then of course there's like TikTok doom scrolling of, fires in Hawaii and you name it, it's not a lot of happy stuff, which is why I, at the time, was really obsessed with those orcas that were like sinking ships in the Mediterranean. I'm glad they're done doing that now, because I'm hoping to be on a boat in a yacht or something like that off of Croatia. So I would like my boat not to be sunk. But I loved what they were doing, and I thought it was by orcas specifically, please.
Specifically.
But I specifically, although there would not really be any sharks in the water if orcas were there. So if I
Okay.
had to have my bunk or my boat sunken, I guess I would rather it be when there are orcas because I could probably swim to shore then, hopefully. And they're not killing people once they've sunken the boats. They're just like, you know, you got to get those out of our waters now. But I was really obsessed with that whole storyline. And then now with like the whole aliens thing, that's become like a fun icebreaker in the salon. And we've talked about like, do we think that they're appearing, you know, in like Men in Black? Do we think that we've already had interactions with aliens? What's the concept? And we were talking about if an alien had to come as an animal, what would it be? Or a human? And I was like, somebody said cat, and I was like, yeah, but what if they ended up with like an abusive owner? And we were like, what's the apex predator of the world? Orcas. They're so smart. They kill literally everything in the ocean. They are number one. And the ocean is vast, and we don't really understand everything that's happening in the deep sea. So
Mm.
that led me to believe, I was like, okay, for sure, orcas are of human level intelligence. So I'm like, they definitely, that's the aliens.
Very
Which, you know,
interesting.
sometimes
I
it's
have to
fun to switch
say,
things up a little bit.
yeah, well, I'm apparently unaware of all of these orca details. And after this
Oh,
podcast interview, I'm going to willingly fall down the rabbit hole,
oh my
the
gosh, it
orca
is
hole.
so entertaining. Just search White Gladys and you'll just be enthralled. Instead of doom scrolling, you will be orca scrolling and it'll be wonderful.
It's probably better than doom scrolling, orca scrolling.
Oh, so much better. Yeah. It's good to get things, you know, take your mind off of things, and that's why I love watching garbage reality TV and, you know, just things that take my mind off of all the heaviness of the real world. And
Yes,
that includes
managing
animals like
managing the
pets.
salon staff.
Yeah, it can be tough. You know, it's very, very rewarding, but you know, like I said before, being a business owner and especially somebody who kind of directly employs people in the way that salons do, it's a very lonely place. I'm really lucky that I have two business partners, and we very much balance each other. And I like literally would I would be in a I would probably be living on the streets if I had to do it on my own. There's a reason why salon owners get the rap that they do because it's really tough on your mental health. And so if I did not have the other two people in my life who are sharing this load, I definitely wouldn't want to do it. So that really, really helps. But still, you know, it is interesting to be like a villain in somebody's head, and half the time you don't even know that somebody hates you, you know. And then at the other hand, you know, I've been able to see our stylists grow and move into a tax bracket completely different. Their lifestyles change. We have a really great group of people, and we all make each other laugh and have a lot of fun at work and enjoy spending time with each other outside of work. So there's pluses and minuses with all of it, but you know, and sometimes the downs are much, much lower than the ups, and sometimes the ups are much, much higher than the downs, and you just kind of got to keep rolling with it and know it's going to equalize at some point.
If you could wave a wand and change anything about the industry at all right now, what would it be?
Honestly, I think a combination of jealousy and dishonesty. Um, I think it is normal and healthy to admire and like maybe experience a little bit of jealousy about somebody who's in a point that that you would like to be in, you know, who's doing things that you would like to do, who's working with brands you want to. But there's a lot of ugliness. I think that the core of that is jealousy in stylists. Um, and I also just kind of wish that more people would be honest about, you know, anything from what it's like to work with a brand, you know, what the business side is of owning a salon, or you know, the benefit of working with this company versus that company. You know, there's a lot of like people who keep their cards very tight and close to their chest, which I understand because if you have been burned before, you know, it's harder to open up. But I really feel like a lot of the ugliness that we see stems in like a misunderstanding. And I think that sounds like very kumbaya or like woo woo, but like genuinely, I think um, if we were to kind of take the pull back the curtain, we would see that literally every single stylist, even the ones that like all of us want to be, have bad days, fuck up on clients, go home and want to just drown in their bathtub. They all have days where they feel like they are not doing it and they are not going to make it. And I think if more people understood that and maybe also got to see the process of how someone got there, a lot of the just like shit talking and like judgy nastiness would hopefully go away a little bit. Um,
Mm-hmm.
the other thing is like I wish for stylists who would not become rigid in their careers. So many stylists hit a certain point where they're like, oh, I don't need to take that class. I've already done that. Oh, I don't need to do this. I've already done that. Why would I want to learn how to do this? Because it already looks like this. And, unfortunately, they are setting our industry back and they're doing it for us. They themselves are creating the bad conception. And I think things have changed so much because of Instagram. Like our clients respect us more than they ever have. They believe in our industry more than they ever have. They know the level of skill that is required. But there's still ones who are like, so when are you going to go back to school and like be a nurse or, whatever. And I think it's those stylists who are determined to be comfortable their entire careers and start just kind of closing up and getting harder the longer they do it and judgier of like the new baby stylists who are coming along. They're really setting our industry back. And like I said, they're doing it for all of us. Like we can't control that. So I wish that the egos, but more than anything, the like fear of something different would subside a little bit and that everybody would just stay open to the change that is going to continue to come forever.
Yeah, of course. Totally agree. You mentioned even the top hairstylists have issues and they have bad days and they make mistakes. And that's why I asked the next question, which is, do you have any hair horror stories? You can say it of a hairstylist and, a fellow hairstylist in a salon you were working in or something you did or, whatever.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, there was one time where I was working at a salon and I remember I had just learned about color removers, what they were. This was, obviously a long time ago. And another stylist had a client come in and she had like black hair color on her ends and like her natural base, of course, was like a 6 or something like that. And she was wanting to maybe be blonde. I wasn't there for the consultation, but I was there for like the hovering stylists and like hearing what everybody was talking about. And I remembered we had color remover and I was like, I literally just watched Guy Tang explain like what a color remover was. So like, what if you tried that first? And she was like, obviously it was a new thing and she didn't really know how it would work. And so she was like, no, I'm going to go in with a bleach. So she, she did a very detailed bleach out. And then at the bowl, it was like cotton candy. So obviously the client had probably had blonde previously before going dark. And just like as she was, oh God, it was so awful. As she was like brushing through, you just saw like gobs of hair coming out. And ultimately like homegirl left with, I think like a little bob or something. Her color looked better than when she came in, but it was like horrifying. That is probably one of the most disturbing things to see.
She got a surprise haircut.
She sure did.
Yeah.
Yeah, every time you start a corrective color, you warn them we might need to take some length off, but, none of us knew that it was going to be that much length. So
Oh my God.
I like literally send shivers down my spine.
Yeah. But that's why we talk about these things because as you call them, the baby hairstylist, is good for them to hear these things because they may make a mistake like this one day. And, we don't want people to freak out. We want people to learn from these mistakes.
Definitely. Yep. That's something that I kind of tell them constantly is, the beauty of continuing to take education and like non focus that education on what you want to be passionate about, what you want to specialize in. But that means that you have a wheelhouse that just continues to grow and grow and grow. And the biggest thing that I try to teach the people who assist me is, like I have a lot of anxiety behind the chair or just as a general human being. And the way that I control my client's experience and then also myself so that I'm not miserable all day long is I take a second when I go back to mix up color and I like basically spin through my wheelhouse of knowledge. And then I always try to be, I'm like a step by step person where I'm like, right now I'm worried about this. Then I'm worried about this. Then I'm worried about this. And I tell them, like, you can write that down. You can sit down and say it out loud to somebody, whatever you want to do. But I'm like, focus and come up with a step-by-step plan, figure out what it is that you need to fix. Because, like I have return clients, but I have clients who will come in and really surprise me. And they're like, I want to be this today. And I'm like, okay, so we're going to go back to the color bar and figure this out. And, the more knowledge you absorb, the bigger your wheelhouse. And then the less likely you are to have like an absolute oh shit moment. You might have like a little drop in your stomach oh shit moment where you're like, oh, I hope this is okay. But there's not going to be like a gobs of platinum blonde mush coming out of the bowl or somebody with like blazing hot roots, just staring at you from the white color bowl. And that is kind of the best thing that I do for myself on a daily basis is I try to not let myself get ahead of the plan. I'm like, I don't care about that right now. I don't know. I can't tell you what I'm going to tone her with. Right now I'm doing this. Right. And this is the only thing I can focus on.
Oh, 100%. 100%. Controlling your thoughts is so important. And, I have the same issues. All right. Any last words for the community?
I don't think so. Thanks for listening, and hopefully I didn't bore you too much with me talking.
No, you did great. And I appreciate it, and the listeners appreciate it, and I hope to see you at a hair show one of these days.
Yeah, I would love that. I hope to run into you for sure.